Hi guys, Bruno G here. Kaveh set is done, and as usual I will highlight some of its features. This time I did some experimentation and also had an opportunity to talk with my friend who just recently finished his full Kaveh cosplay, and he helped me with some points of connection between some parts and other stuff. So, let's start with the hardware. I ordered a bunch of those airing hooks, like a pack of these. I don't know, it's cheap. So I bend it straight and remove the little ball. Okay. We don't need it that long. So this is what I have. A small little mini hook, a little metal mini hook. This will be used all across the set. I will show you later. So let's talk about the airing first. Here I wanted to experiment and see if it is possible to print those little gems separately, because they are very small, just tiny, and I wanted to see if I can model and print it so it fits together nicely and looks good. And as you can see, it was a success. This is obviously a resin print, just a test one, but nonetheless. And on the top here, it has a small tiny hole for this part. And what I did is I insert this hook, and usually I do it before painting, and I put some fresh resin here, cure it with the UV flashlight, and sand and finish this area so it looks good, like this. So this is point number one, the gems. I made the models already with the support structures. Yeah, so after those little pieces are printed, I paint them with my airbrush and transparent lacquer paints, like Mr. Color, for example, model paints. After that, I give it a clear coat, and after the clear coat is totally cured, I snap off the support structures. But be careful with the resin, it's quite brittle. I snapped it off just a couple millimeters away from the edge, and then I just sanded it a little bit so it can fit snugly in its slot, like this. For the red gem, it consists of two parts. Like if I take it out, it's two gems, and I did it that way so that you could put some reflective material between them, because every gem looks way better if it has reflective backing. For example, you can use regular household aluminum foil for this. If you're not sure about printing those gems separately, there is a version like this, so you can just paint those spots where the gems are. Also, I've tested it on the FDM printer, and This is also a success, as you can see. But obviously it requires a bit more post-processing, and the tiny hole on the top here is non-existent. For the FDM it's too small. But we have a workaround. If you take this piece of the airing hook, secure it in some kind of pliers, and just heat it up with the lighter, you can melt its way into the part. It also works for the other parts with those little hooks. Of course, I have tested this melting thing and it works pretty alright. Now let's talk about simple parts like those guys. All of those parts are printed standing like that, maybe on a little bit of angle from the build plate. I usually do that because it gives a lot cleaner result. Yes, we have a rough bottom on those parts. Focus. But that's not a lot of work to make it look good, to clean it up, and all the rest of the model looks fine. So I took a picture of pretty much every print that I made, or every test print that I made, to showcase how I positioned those models for optimal printing. This part, for example, it has a flat side, and you could print it lying on the build plate like that. But as the rest of the parts, I printed it standing like that, with a little bit of angle, and it gives much cleaner result, much cleaner print, as you can see. So those are easy. Those are easy. Now for the necklace. Necklace has a number of parts. Let me assemble it first. So we have a central necklace piece. A couple of words about it. First of all, there are two versions. This is a version where you can just paint those kind of gems. You can just mask around and paint them the way you like. But if you want to do something similar to the earring, there is a version with the gems separated. So choose the one you think you can get the best results with. So it has 3 pins and they correlate with this part. If the holes are too snug, feel free to sand a little bit inside the holes or those pins. The top 2 pins should protrude a little bit to create like 3 pins here, and those are After it's assembled, you can drop some glue on those spots, but to be honest, they are quite secure. Those thin parts are pretty flexible, as you can see, and I have no issues putting it over my neck. So there are also those guys that go on the chest, but they are also easy. so we put them into the easy pile. And then there is 3 dangling bits around here, like this one and 2 of those. The centerpiece is also 2 parts. I separated it for easier painting. So the center is black, the outer part is gold, and there are some geometry to align it properly. Like that. And it has a small hole for our mini metal hooks. And the side part also has a small hole for the hook focus. There is a hole inside to connect those parts using something like a wire, for example, or like a golden looking thread. Okay, now continuing the theme of those small metal hooks, we have those parts that are on the belt. As you can see, it's dangling pretty freely, but if you want, you can always add additional small ring here. So those parts are made like that. One word about these 2 pieces. So I print them standing, almost like every print, like that, on the supports, despite it having a flat side. As it's printed on this point, it has a very rough place here after printing, and it's difficult to access those little holes for the hooks. So you can do the same thing as with the FDM printed earring and just hit this little thing up and insert it while it's hot. I understand that maybe this way of connecting things is not optimal for everyone, so I added alternative versions, additional versions of those models without holes. So every model that has a hole has basically a copy of it without any additional geometry, like a hole here. So you can do it the way you like. So this part that's dangling on the belt is separate too, and with separate gems that you can make a mold, cast, or print in transparent resin and make beautiful crystals or gems. And I separated it on 3 parts for easier post-processing. So yeah, like that. Okay, so now for this guy. This is another of mine experiments this time. Previously, when I made that kind of gems with the designs from the Genshin, I used a model like that. I used it for making a silicon mold, and then I casted this gem in epoxy resin. I did it for a monoset like this, and well, it turned fine, I think. But this time I wanted to do something different. So what I did here is I took a half a sphere and made this design indent on the inside. You can see it on the picture here. I painted the indent and cleaned it up a little bit so that all the edges of the paint are sharper. I used some silver paints here, but it's not very silvery looking to me, so maybe just white will also work. Or if you want to make the silver paint more silvery, you can first use some clear coat on the inside to smooth the resin print, and it should help with the way the metallic paint looks, because I think it looks like a bit gray, because the raw resin print is a bit rough, not very smooth. So after I applied paint here, I just filled it up with the regular 2-part epoxy resin and painted the back of this gem with the silver paint. So we get this awesome effect. Couple of points if you will choose to use this method. Couple of advices. First of all, do couple of coats of paint for the design, because you can see here that there are places where the paint is a little bit transparent. Like this is very obvious spot. And also you can see a lot of microscopic tiny bubbles inside. And when I was pouring the resin, there was no bubbles. They appeared only after curing. I think the reason is the volume of this gem is too big for that type of resin. Resin got very hot while curing, and it led to slight deformation of the shape, just very slightly, and led to those little bubbles. So choose the right resin. Choose the resin that has curing time for at least 24 hours. Even better if it has curing time for 48 hours. All the bubbles will come out and it will cure slowly and will not heat up. And it will look much cleaner than this one. Focus. Yeah. So yeah, I think this experiment is a success. Yeah, and after all of that, I just clear coated over it, because I wanted to make a completely smooth surface without any shape or design indentations, but I also wanted this like 3D effect, and I think it looks good. So yeah, so the rest of this model, the outer part, is also in two variations, like this one in one big unified piece, and divided on 3 pieces, like this top part, this ring, and the lower part. Divided version is better for resin printing. It will be easier to post-process. And the last thing I want to talk about is the legs. I try to avoid making models for printing that cover any kind of joint, because any rigid part on flexible human joint either will break or harm you. In my opinion, just in my experience, every rigid part around elbows or ankles, they are very uncomfortable. To make this set complete, I decided to at least include a foam pattern for this for those parts. I don't have much experience with foam. My general recommendation here: make some paper tests, and if everything fits okay and looks good, proceed with like 2, maybe 3 millimeter EVA foam. And well, good luck printing!